Hello and welcome to the Epic Marketing Show. Today we're going to be talking about how to get the most out of your marketing automation. This is one of those topics where people are like, say what? Because it includes a methodology for getting the most out of your marketing automation. So make sure you've got yourself a cup of something strong. I have got a really lovely cup of something called Glow, and it's in a nice big cup. So hopefully I'll be glowing throughout this video. So go grab yourself a cup of something and let's get started. So how do you go about getting the most out of your marketing automation? How do you go about creating an epic plan for your marketing automation that you know is going to get you success in the end? This is a question that pretty much every business that is implementing some form of marketing automation is going to be asking themselves. And when I first started working in marketing automation, it was one that really intrigued me. I've been in the industry for 6 to 7 years now, quite some time, almost as long as marketing automation has been around for. And something that really intrigued me when I first started working was the fact that sometimes you could take the exact same campaigns, the exact same kind of content, the exact same strategy, and in two very similar businesses with very similar audiences, you could put them in and implement them and launch them, and in one business it would succeed and it would take off, and in another business it would fail. And this wasn't just something that I saw happen once or twice, it was something that I saw happen repeatedly. And while I was kind of working on someone else's dollar, it was a great opportunity for me to kind of research this. And then when I started my own company, I really threw myself into figuring out exactly what this was. What was this phenomenon that caused some things to fail and other things that were exactly the same as the thing that failed to succeed and to fly? And so I really started, doing my typical researching this to the death. And what I uncovered was it's not just down to behavior. Obviously, people aren't designing for behavior, and that causes marketing to fail, and ultimately for businesses not to get the return on investment that they expect to get. It wasn't just the lack of that designing for behavior, but rather it was the lack of something else. And so I started kind of reverse engineering what other people were doing. I interviewed people, I read tons and tons of books, I read case study after case study after case study, and I devoted basically the first year of Automation Ninjas being alive for to actually really understanding exactly what this process was. And out of that reverse engineering of other people's successes and other people's failures, we created our own internal methodology. And now, nearly kind of 4 years on, I think it's time to share that methodology with the world so that you can get the same successes that we get with our clients in your own business. And so what we really discovered was that some businesses are reactive and other businesses are proactive. And when you take the same kind of information and you implement them in the same kind of businesses, the businesses that are reactive and just do things when they have to are the ones that ultimately end up failing. And those that are proactive and are consistently tweaking and optimizing and improving things can take a failure and turn it into a massive success. And there are actually steps that you can do to make sure that you can achieve success with almost every campaign that you implement within your business. And that's what I want to teach you today. I'm going to take you through our own internal methodology for helping our customers achieve great success with their campaigns. I'm going to show you how you can be one of those much more reactive businesses that achieve loads of success. I'm going to show you exactly what you need to do that. So this internal methodology that we ended up putting together, we ended up calling ARMI. And ARMI is an acronym for Assessment, Recommendation, Machination, and Implementation. And I'm going to break those down for you. So the first phase we start with is assessment. And assessment is where we spend a lot of time figuring out exactly where you are. So this is going through and basically just picking everything apart to make sure that you've got enough information to be able to put a really good plan together and then execute that plan. And the first part of assessment is having a look at your customer journey. So it's really dissecting your customer journey, pulling it apart, looking at all the parts that make your customer journey good, all the parts that make it probably not so great, and making sure that you have a plan for that customer journey. So after you're really, really clear on your customer journey, the next thing you want to be looking at is your lifecycle marketing strategy. And we want to make sure that you've got things in place for the attract part of the strategy. Want to make sure you've got things in place for the engage part of the strategy, the sell part, and the deliver and wow part. So basically, we're trying to identify whether or not you've got gaps in your lifecycle marketing strategy process. Because if you've got gaps in that process, it means that any of the campaigns and things that you put in place might fail. And they might struggle a little bit because they might need to be relying on parts of your lifecycle marketing strategy that you may not have, which is not ideal. So we're just trying to make sure that there aren't any gaps, and if there are gaps, we want to make plans to address that. After you're clear on your customer journey and you've got a lifecycle marketing strategy in place, the next thing we want to check is that you have clear goals. Now, there are a million different ways to go about having a look at your goals, but we recommend the SMART goal method. So just making sure that you've got each of those letters in place for the acronym SMART, and making sure that the goals are really clear and that they are achievable, because the last thing you want to do is put a plan together for a goal that isn't clear, because it means that different parts of your company might have different ideas about what you're trying to achieve, and that is a great way for everybody to get upset and ultimately to fail. Once we've had a look at your goals and we're really, really clear at exactly where you're trying to go, the next part is looking at your historical achievements. Now, it's really, really important when you're bringing a consultant on or when you're working on a new project to not ignore the history of the company. So if you have sent out things before, if you have had certain engagements with customers before, if you have done things before that have worked, if you have done things before that haven't worked, it's really good to look at those historical achievements and understand why they may have happened that way, and use the learnings for the new implementations of your customer journey and also the new things that you're going to be creating. Don't forget to learn from the history that your company has been through. It's really, really important to make sure that you're including for the entire process things that you have done previously. It's also important because if you've had people on your list for a long time, they may be part of that historical journey. So they may know what you have sent out previously, and they may be clear. They may kind of have insights that you may not have thought about. And it's really always nice to ask those people, send them a little survey or send them a little bit of information that they can go in and have a look at and impart a little bit of their wisdom as someone who's actually been through the customer journey. So don't forget about your historical achievements. Don't forget about the historical people on your list as well, and make sure that the historical information is helping back up and clarify your goals, helping create structure for your lifecycle marketing strategy, and also making sure that it's backing up your customer journey. So by having a clear customer journey, even if it's in a customer journey you're aspiring to, so it doesn't have to be the entire process, making sure that you're clear on where you're going with your lifecycle marketing strategy, having really clear and concise goals, and also being really clear on historically what you have achieved, that means that you really know where you stand right now. And any consultant that you hire should be doing these things as well, because with this in mind, they will have a clear picture of where you are, and only by having a clear picture of where you are can you actually create the map to where you want to go. Because if you don't know where you are, you won't be able to pinpoint where you are on the map, and you won't be able to create the journey for it. After assessment, we move into recommendation. And I always spell recommendation wrong, so I'm just going to put rec down. So the recommendation phase is all about looking at the information that you have gathered from the assessment phase and then creating the kind of structure to move forward so that you can start planning. It is not the actual planning itself. It's just looking and making strategic recommendations based on this information so that you're gathering all of your ideas together to go into the planning phase. So in recommendation, the first thing you're going to start doing is you're going to get the strategic input based on all the stuff that you've put together from assessment. So it's kind of giving your opinions on maybe historical achievements, giving your opinions and how you think that you can improve the customer journey, how you can set up and improve your lifecycle marketing strategy, all those kind of great strategic input that is the time to pull all of that out of the bag. In the first assessment, you're just gathering the information. In the recommendation phase, you're brainstorming, you're getting the ideas together, and you're starting to formulate a plan. So second on that is you might start researching your implementation. Right, so if you're going to be implementing a certain type of thing, so let's say your goal might be to put together a long-term nurture strategy, or your goal might be to put together a series of webinars, whatever that goal is, you may start actually researching ways that you're going to actually implement that and start getting all the information together. This is a very important part of the recommendation phase. It's where you put your research hat on. Recommendation is also where you start doing things like identifying your tactics. So following on really nicely from researching, this is where you're going to identify how all those little tactics that go into the strategy. So whether that is by doing little things like you're going to send out several little campaigns to engage your list, or whatever those little tactics are going to be, the type of campaign you're going to run, the type of thing that you're going to do, all those little tactics, this is the point where you identify them. And once you've identified the tactics, the next thing you want to do is some SWOT analyses. So you're going to be looking at the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats of that tactic or the tactics, and you're also going to be doing a SWOT analysis on what your competitors are up to make sure that you're really clear on what the market conditions are like, and so you've got a nice good picture of how everything is going to be received. Once you've done your SWOT analyses, it is time to identify your buckets. All right, so effectively your buckets are your gaps. They're kind of the holes inside your ideas and your strategies, and this is all part of the brainstorming session. What you want to do is you want to find as many blind spots, as many kind of things where the sort of areas where there are unknown quantities, and you want to quantify everything as much as possible. And you want to put strategies in place to help with those little gaps and those holes and those blind spots and whatever you want to call them. We say they're little leaky holes in your funnel, and you put a bucket underneath it effectively. So you want to identify your buckets. And I realized I just spelled identify terribly wrong, but it's fine. I've left an N out. But effectively, you want to put things in place to actually identify those kind of gaps, and you want to identify the strategies to help block those gaps. And so we call those buckets. Once you've identified your buckets, you want to move on to the next part. And the next part is identifying the behavior. So one of the most common practices and the most common reasons why things fail is that behavior is not designed for. So you want to go back and you want to double check over the things that you've researched and make sure that you're kind of bringing information in for different types of customer behaviors. Have you learned from the historical information? You know, how did customers behave previously? Is your life cycle marketing strategy kind of using behavioral techniques? Is your customer journey geared towards specific types of customer behavior? Are you planning for behavior? Are you planning on certain behaviors? Are you planning for lack of behavior? This is where you bring the behavioral element in. Once you've identified your behavior, what you're next going to do is you're going to look for your lead and lag indicators, right? So these are going to be your KPIs, and they're also going to be the little things that you're going to be looking out for to make sure that you're going to achieve your goal. And if you're not sure on what the difference is between lead and lag indicators, you can check out the links in the description for another video which shows you exactly what the lead and lag indicators are and how you need to be thinking about those. But you want to identify what most of your lead and lag indicators are right in this phase. So to recap, in recommendation, it's all the strategic input, it's all of your research, it's identifying your tactics and kind of running them through SWOT analyses. It's identifying some buckets to make sure you're filling all of the gaps. It's looking for certain types of behavior, making sure that you've thought about them, and it's also making sure that you're thinking about what your lead and lag indicators are. Now, most companies don't even do assessment, and they certainly don't do recommendations. So if you can do these two parts of the process, you're way ahead of your competition and you're way more likely to succeed. Remember, this process came about from loads and loads of distilling the successes and failures of other companies. So by following this process, you can help make sure that you get as strong as possible. So once you're done with assessment and recommendation, we now move into machination. So the machination phase is all about strategy, and machination, for those of you that aren't weird and have silly vocabularies like I have, is basically just the strategy part. Okay, so you've got all of your information from your assessment phase, you've got all of your ideas and everything, and now you're going to take all of those ideas and those concepts and you're going to distill them into an actual plan, which is why we call this machination, because it's the act of kind of putting a plan together in almost an automated way. And that's exactly what we're trying to do. But if you don't like the word machination, feel free to use the word strategy. You're just going to change the acronym from ARMI to RC. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, actually. You can get kind of armied up with your strategy, or you can get RC with your strategy. You know, it's a free world. So in the machination phase, what you're going to want to do first and foremost is you're going to want to map your flows out. So you're going to want to get some flow charts together. You're going to want to map the entire process based on how you've decided you're going to go about doing your implementation. You now want to map it all out, because mapping everything out and having a very clear idea of exactly how the entire process is going to go is going to give you a very clear understanding of who needs to do what. And that's where an action and implementation plan comes in. So the next part is what we call an action and impact plan. And an action and impact plan is actually part of the small business success method, which was something that was created by Infusionsoft, and it's also part of our own internal strategy. And what an action and impact plan does is it allows you to identify exactly what needs to be created, who it needs to be created by, what are the tools and the skill sets involved, and who's going to own those parts of the project. And so it really allows you to kind of break the project down so that you can succeed with that project. So here are the individual parts for creating an action and impact plan. So first and foremost, what you're going to do is you're going to identify what the assets are. So the assets are going to be things like, if you're creating a lead generation series, you may have a lead magnet. So the lead magnet in this example is the asset. It's the thing that you need to create that you could rinse and repeat and use it for another process. So you can identify all of your assets. Next, you're going to identify the different content that needs creating. So sticking with the lead generation example, if you're going to have like an opt-in series for a specific lead magnet leading up to a sale, the lead magnet is the asset, but the content is all of the emails that's going to go along with the asset. Once you've identified the content, the next thing you've got to identify is the skills. So sticking again with this example that we've got, you may have some videos that are going out alongside the lead magnet, and the videos are probably going to require some specific skill sets. They're going to require a videographer. If you're going to be writing content, it's going to require someone to create the copy. If it's going to be a PDF lead magnet, for instance, you're going to require somebody who has some editing experience and also some experience putting all that together. So identifying the skills is really important, because this is also the point that you might need outside help. You might need to bring someone else in. It's also the point where you might identify things like pages on the website will need changing. So you're going down into minute detail as to how you're going to achieve that flow that you've mapped out. Once you've identified the skills, your next job is to identify the tools required. And this is as simple as looking at all of the things you've created so far and going, right, what tools do we actually need to make this happen? So if you are creating a lead magnet, you're probably going to need something like InDesign that is going to help you create the actual PDF. If you're creating videos, the tools that you're going to need might be video cameras, etc. If you're putting things on the website, the tools that you might need may be the WordPress stuff. If you're sending stuff out from your marketing automation system, that's going to need to be a tool in its own right as well. So the reason we have a tools section in this process is to make sure that you're really clear if you need to actually invest in anything else. You're really clear that you have everything you need in order to make this happen, and you're also clear of all the individual parts. And once you've got the assets, the content, the skills, and the tools identified, at that point, it's the opportunity to identify the owner of all those different parts. Because once you've identified the owners, you can say, okay, I need to do this, Phil might need to do this, Lucy might need to do this, Mel might need to do something, Becca might need to do something, Mike might need to do something, and you're identifying exactly who in your team might need to do all the different constituent parts, and then you can start putting it together as a whole and see, actually, how can we implement all of this? Is it possible for us to do all of this? And it will give you a much clearer idea of the timescales involved. Because the next part of the planning phase is to put timescales in place. And you can only do that when you know what all of the individual moving parts are. And what we then say is, you've kind of got a plan at this point in time. You're really clear on the kind of process that you're going to go down. You've broken it down into very minute detail of who needs to do what and what all the different parts are. And then you're also clear on when you can get everything done by. And because you've mapped it out, it's very clear exactly how long it's going to take. Putting timescales in place is probably the thing that I see people do wrong the most often, because they don't realize how much goes into launching something. And that's why it's really, really important to decide on your impact plan. And once you've done all of that, it's time to go back to the beginning and go, right, have we got everything in place for behavior? And basically critique the entire process. You want to go through, have we got things in place for behavior, and have we got things in place for buckets, etc. So you want to critique everything that you've put together, and it's all this stuff up here that you're basically critiquing in this point. It's just a massive double checking of the entire process. So the machination phase is all about creating the actual plan based on the information that you got from assessment and the research that you may have done and the ideas you've got in recommendation. That's putting the plan in place itself. And then the next part is the part where you actually get the stuff done. The next part is the implementation phase. Okay, so you have assessed where you are, you've got all that information, you have recommended yourself to death, you have all of the ideas and stuff gathered together, you've created an absolutely rad plan. What's next? Well, this is the I part of the process, and we are moving into the implementation phase. And I can just about spell implementation, thank goodness. So the implementation phase is all about getting shit done, right? It is the GSD part of this process. It's about taking all of your ideas and actually making it happen. One of the most important parts of the getting shit done phase is actually sticking to the plan. For the love of God, stick to your plan. Okay, which is why I'm putting that in capital letters and underlining it. So what we tend to see is people get really excited in this part because they're seeing things happen. There's a lot of brain stuff going on in the rest of the time, but now they're actually seeing things happen and it's tangible. And what tends to happen is they go, okay, well, we can do an extra 2 videos, or we can do an extra 6 emails, and they effectively double their workload. And that is scope creep. Not only will it make the team that is actually implementing all of your stuff incredibly grumpy, it could incur you additional costs, and it will mean that you may lose sight of your goal, which is exactly what you don't want to be doing. So you want to make sure that you are actually sticking to the plan. Okay, and once you are sure that you are sticking to the plan, you can do things like tweak little bits here and there, because you want to be keeping an eye on your lead and lag indicators, and that is fine, but you want to make sure that you're actually making it all happen, and that you're not introducing a whole bunch of scope creep that will change the direction of where you're going and ultimately end up in you not achieving your goals. So once you're clear on the plan and you're sticking to it, I don't know if I can say that anymore, you actually want to make sure now that you are creating your assets and your content, right? So this is where you go away and you might film one of those videos, you might create your PDF, you might write the emails, you might put things on your website, you might change things and tweak things and do all of the stuff that you identified you would need to do in the assets and content creation. And it's also the part in which you're going to execute your skills and tools, right? So it's where you're going to do things like if you needed to get a professional videographer in, you're going to do that. if you needed to put stuff on the website and use specific pieces of software, you're going to do that as well. So it's just getting stuff done, plain and simple. Once you have got everything done, you've built your stuff because you've executed your skills and your tools, you have created your content and your assets, and you have got everything together with regards to the lovely plan that you have created, it is now time to test. And that's another one in capitals, because some people get so excited that they don't end up testing it, and they end up making a boo-boo and looking like a bit of a silly sausage in front of everyone, which is exactly what you don't want to do, okay? So make sure that you test. Please test, test, test. Sometimes testing can take as long as creating the whole thing, which is a shame, but it is vitally important if you don't want to look like a silly sausage. And once you have tested everything, this is your opportunity to make sure that you are keeping an eye on the data. Okay, so you've got to make sure that you are actively collecting data, and making sure you've got a plan and a process in place to actually collect that data, and that you're launching. Whoop, whoop. Okay, so you're actually making that thing live out there and then collecting data on how people are engaging with it. So it's your opportunity to now kind of keep an eye on those lead and lag indicators because you've launched, and making sure that you're collecting all of the information and the data. It's important that you collect data and information on how the implementation process has gone as well. So how long did it take you? How much did it cost? All that kind of stuff, so that you can include that in your ROI calculations when you're actually having a look at your reporting. So from implementation, we now go into the second phase, and that is loop 2 of assessment. And what we start to see is pretty rad. So you've gone from assessment to recommendation, you've gone from recommendation to machination, you've gone from machination over to implementation, and now you are going into loop 2 of the assessment phase. And this has got to be the most exciting part. This little loop 2 over here is what makes people stand out from all the other people doing things out there. It's what makes some people succeed and other people fail. So effectively, loop 2 is where you take all of that information and you are now assessing what you have just done. This is what the Japanese call Kaizen, which is the art of continual improvement. And this is the secret sauce to this entire process. Because now you're going to take all of that kind of information that you've collected, you're going to report on it, and you're going to do what we call a postmortem. And a postmortem is dissecting everything that you've done, how it's worked, what went well, what didn't go well, and you're going to take all of that information, you're going to assess where you are, and then you're going to make a recommendation on it. And from that recommendation, you're going to basically be able to go, okay, how do we improve this? I suggest we do this. Next time we need to make sure we avoid this. And you create those lists of things, and then you go into the machination phase and you create a plan for that. And when you've got a plan for that, you implement it, and so on and so forth, until you've got the most ridiculously awesome campaign that has got crazy conversion rates. It's by taking our clients and our customers through this process that we've got some of our customers to like 50% conversion rates. It wasn't something that happened overnight. It didn't happen the first time. They started off with an okay campaign, then they had a good campaign, then they had an excellent campaign, and then they have the sort of campaign that you look at the stats and go, what? Is that real? Exactly. That's what you want, right? You want like your stats to be kind of ridiculous in a rad way, not in a bad way. So this is ARMI, or RC, if you want to call it that. And this is what I encourage you to put in your business, to implement in your own business and make it your own. Take this process. We know it works. We've been taking our clients and customers through it for nearly 5 years now. I would love to know how you're using this process. So pop any comments that you've got. If you've got your own kind of process that you're using, I'd love to know about that as well. So pop that in the comments below. If you would like some help implementing a project with this process, then by all means get in touch. You can pop me an email at kenda@automationninjas.com, and I will make sure I get you the help that you need, but not in a psychologist way, please. Thanks. So you can pop me an email if you do want a hand with this process yourself, and I will unleash my team on you, which is always a rad thing to have happen. And if you haven't already done so, please make sure that you are subscribed, like up this video if you enjoyed it and it helped. And as always, until next time, go forth and be epic.